And we'll open up to commissioners for deliberation.
Commissioners, Commission President Fong and I discussed a strategy to try to approach the various pieces of legislation that are before you. And I believe if you choose to, I think the easiest way to go about it is to take each recommendation individually, deliberate them, and then have a consensus vote on them. And then we could either vote on each one then, or just I could mark which ones have consensus and then create a motion that would adopt a recommendation with certain recommendations and or any recommendations that end up getting amended or modified through your discussion process as one option that you could use or take to sort of tackle this complicated proposal in front of you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice President Wu.
Thank you. So I think that is helpful advice, but I do want to be clear that there are some pieces that have been discussed today that are not in any of the recommendations. So I just want to be clear that commissioners could then either add another recommendation or just highlight the topic about which they would like to make a ruling on.
Indeed, thank you.
So if you can help us control that and to each of these items, it'd be great.
I'd like to make general comments. Sorry to interrupt, because we have, and then we can go into the.
Should we allow that? Maybe the commissioners make general comment
around the general reactions,
and then tackle each one once each commissioner's had an opportunity to
Very
speak.
good. Very good.
That's good.
Commissioner Richards.
Okay. Wow, that's not as much as it was in August, but still enough. I sat through the hearing in August, and I was on the other side of the rail there. I wasn't sitting up here yet, although I was a nominee and wasn't confirmed. The morning of the Board of Supervisors vote on the current piece of legislation, I did call him up, Mr. Supervisor Wiener, and I said, Supervisor Wiener, the proposed legislation is not enforceable. And if it's not enforceable, it's really designed to fail. And I really view that it's failing. That's why we're here so soon after its effective date of February 1st. I think revising the existing legislation, we'll get into the specifics of that later, is common sense, and I think it's good government. I think there is an abysmal record of registrations currently outstanding. It's around 10%. It's 455 if you look in the case report, and I think 170 licenses have been granted. There's a couple hundred more outstanding, and the cancellation rate's about 130 or 140. So that's abysmal, given that there's thousands of thousands of rentals out on the platforms. I think we all agree that probably this commission, I don't want to speak for them, and I heard from the audience, pretty much 95% of people all agree short-term rentals have a place in this city. Okay, I personally agree that. Fact, short-term rentals benefit some citizens financially and culturally. Fact, short-term rentals benefit businesses both financially and culturally. Fact, short-term rentals benefit the city financially through taxes and through employment, and also culturally. Fact, abuses do exist in the current system. Fact, displacement has occurred as a result of the conversion of existing rental stock to short-term rentals. Fact, everybody agrees small amount of bad actors are causing most of these issues. I actually sat with Mr. Owen and several hosts on April 7th, and we agreed on that common area that it's really the bad actors that are driving the conversation here. And whatever we do, we really don't want to, kind of kill the golden goose and penalize everybody for it. I think fact as well, disproportionate negative impacts do seem to be falling on certain neighborhoods, North Beach, Castro, the Haight, the Mission. Fact, we're in a housing crisis, and nobody can deny that. I think the rest of this conversation today should not be about demonizing people who follow the rules or people who intend to follow the rules. It should be not about demonizing Airbnb or any other hosting platform. It should be really talking about limiting the short-term rental impact on our existing rental housing stock. I think, one quick question, I think as we talked about the contents of the three proposals before us, Kim, Mar Avalos, Campos, Farrell, and Lee, all begin to get us in the right direction. I think we need to strike a balance between what we're going to be asking or recommending to the Board of Supervisors. And I think if we get the balance right, we can hopefully head off an acrimonious November ballot initiative on this issue, and that's my hope. Thank you.
Commissioner Antonini.
Thank you. I'm very familiar with this whole system because I may have mentioned in 1972, my only trip for Europe, my wife and I took the little Volkswagen we bought there, and we, you know, instead of going to hotels or even pensions, which would be too expensive, we went Zimmerfrei, which in German is a house to let, I think. But that's what we did. We stayed in people's houses, and it was a wonderful experience, and it made it very economical. So I'm not a stranger to that, but I think one statement that came in one of the mailings called this the golden age of personal innovative economy, and strangely enough, the center of this, the epicenter, is San Francisco. So I really was impressed by the owners and renters who came up here, acknowledged the cost of housing in San Francisco, but proactively and innovatively renting out parts of their property or units to meet their needs. And, you know, they didn't blame their problems on others. They didn't ask somebody else to fix it. They basically said, yeah, it's tough, but this is what we're doing, and this has allowed us to do it. And I think that's really refreshing to hear. You know, I think there is a problem with a housing shortage, but I think it goes way beyond short-term rentals. It may be a part of it, but the housing shortage has been 30 and 40 years of not building enough housing in San Francisco. And while I'm not speaking against rent control, one of the unintended consequences of it is that people don't move very often. When you get a unit, you get it at a good rent, you're never leaving. And so it means that there are not as many market units on the market, so ones that are there are driven up to a real high cost because everybody's bidding on the ones that are available. And the other thing that happens is there is, and a number of people mentioned this, and it ties into the entire thing, people keep units off the market. There's fear of the cost and litigation to move out renters, even to move a family member in. And it's been said by one speaker, and I think it may be true, that there's like 30,000 units that are being held off the market. So many of these 5,000 units that are being used for short-term rentals, as we've heard in our reports, could be among those that probably wouldn't have been in the market anyway. So, I mean, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing something, but we have to make sure that we don't pass regulations that only make the situation worse. Because we have a positive impact. $469 million is the stated economical benefit of just Airbnb alone, and $250 million, which was apparently what was paid for their monies received before the legislation, and it's been said they contribute in taxes $1 million to the city each month. So a couple things I don't want to support in these legislative pieces, and I'll bring that out. This whole private right of action is a little strange, and I never really understood it, but it was explained to me that if the city has an ordinance, the city is the one who's got to enforce it. If somebody's breaking the ordinance, they're breaking the law, and therefore the city has to step in and do it. It's not for other people can't sue for something that is involving a city ordinance. And to me, it's just invitation for more lawsuits and more problems, because basically it's up to the city to enforce our laws. And if there's something that's going on with a neighbor because of their home sharing, where they're having loud parties or they're causing nuisances, the adjacent people can always sue on that. And even worse, if you give nonprofits the ability to do it, I mean, they're basically going to try to throw a monkey wrench into the whole operation, many of them, so it's just invitation for problems. So I would not be in favor of that. And they've said home sharing helps local businesses, and I can attest to that. When we stayed in people's homes, we were away from the downtown areas, and you shop and eat and do things around that area because it's close. And so I think one thing you got to do is you're going to have to raise the fee. I think it's $50 to register, if I'm not mistaken. You've got to get up to $100 or $200 a year to help generate a little more revenue to be able to do the enforcement and to streamline our process. Because many speakers came up and said, I want to register. It took forever. It was disorganized. I mean, part of the problem is the registration has to be made simpler, more streamlined, and if we charge them $200 a year and we can add a lot more revenue, or perhaps even charge Airbnb a little more, whatever, you know, it doesn't matter. We got to get enough money to make it work. And I'm also not in favor of lowering the hosted amount per year. I mean, a lot of people came up and said, this is our house, we rent out a room in there, it's really their business what they do. I mean, I don't think anybody's saying, and many of them have said, we're not going to have a full-time renter in here. We're only doing this because we want to free it up for relatives and things like that. And I don't think it should be so difficult. They sign an affidavit under penalty of law that they are, in fact, residents at least 300 days a year, or whatever figure you want to make them full-time residents. And I would say they also have to produce signed affidavits from three neighbors attesting to the fact that they're there, and they also would be on the hook if they lie about that. So it would seem to me it's easy enough to prove that somebody is actually a resident that lives there, not somebody who's, you know, renting it out full time. And that would certainly help the people who are sharing bedrooms within their own house. Everybody feels that's not really the problem. The problem is units that are being taken off the market and used as full-time rentals, and that should be a lower number. That should be 120 or 180 or something around there. We heard that the break-even point.
Commissioner Anthony, we're going to have an opportunity to go
into
detail.
Yeah, I'll get into detail. Those are just general comments.
Well, we're going to, just to be clear, we're going to go through each line, each recommendation, and you'll have the time for all of us to get into great detail on that.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I'll stay with. Those are my general comments, and I will stop right now and we'll go into the individual ones, and then I'll tell you what I like and don't like individually.
Wonderful.
But you got a pretty good idea.
Wonderful.
Commissioner Hillis.
I have specific questions on the recommendation, so I'll hold off then in commenting on, I don't have any general comments at this point.
Commissioner Johnson.
I will hold off as well. I have questions about private right of action, which comes up a couple different times, so,
Okay.
yeah, just realize I'm probably good.
Okay. Commissioner Moore.
I will hold off till our general discussion regarding the specifics.
Oh,
Okay.
question, sorry.
Commissioner Johnson.
Question for the commission. I know we're going to do the round robin on the particular recommendations, sort of yay, nay. Is there going to be an opportunity to add any new ones at the end?
Yes.
Okay, so, great.
And if you, we can add to at the very end, if there's more creative suggestions, maybe, obviously we can make a motion for whatever we want and with considerations of other additional thoughts.
Okay.
In this case. Okay. With that structure then, let's, do you want to, Jonas stepped out for a second, but we want to tackle the first one, number one, removal of distinction between hosted and unhosted rentals.